Hello.
What's up?
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. This is the Master Blaster Podcasters. Putting misinformation on blast. We are on rss.com, currently about to distribute to all major platforms. Look out for us. We have had 3 episodes so far. We had woke ideology, global warming, immigration. We will get back to the political discussion next time with QAnon, which will be our 5th episode. We are going to go a different route here, and I'm really excited about this. We do, if you look at our page, it does say entertainment news. Sometimes we do things beyond just political talk. Anyway, today we have a great subject. At the top 20, we each have our own list. Dirty Mouth here. I am Geeziz, at least for the time being.
Yes.
And we've got our top 20 list of the best horror movies of the 1970s. We're going to start at 20, go down to number 1. Just give a brief little synopsis of of our list starting at 20. First, let's do a little bit of background. And by the way, we should do a sequel, the 1980s, shortly afterwards. Hopefully you'll like these episodes. Now, DM, just to start out, just for a couple of minutes, let's do a little background on horror movies, which in America certainly you can go back to Nosferatu. I don't even know if it was that an American movie or was that a German?
German flick.
It was German?
Yeah.
So, you got vampire flicks, go back, those Dracula, the huge monster movie outbreak of the 1930s with Frankenstein, The Mummy, Dracula, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and on through into the 50s, which was a different type of monster movie, more of like the creature feature movies that my dad used to spend a nickel or a dime to go see at the local cinema.
Right.
You had you had Creature from the Black Lagoon and The Thing from Another World, which is one of the few from that area that I've seen that I think is actually really good. That turned out to be an even better movie. From John Carpenter, who's I'm sure going to have some on our list here.
Uh-huh.
The Blob, and then they went on to Godzilla movies, and I can't forget King Kong, which is probably which was an amazing spectacle back in the day. Lots of money spent on that. Anyway, we are big horror movie fans, and so we're going to do our list. DM, before we start at number 20, anything else you want to touch upon as far as the history of horror movies, why we're doing this list, how much you love them, etc.?
Oh, yeah, I love them. Grew up watching horror movies every Sunday. And then in the afternoons on the local, I grew up in L.A., so I think KTLA was a local station, and they would play they would play all kinds of horror movies and B movies in the afternoon. So I got to watch a lot of horror movies, and it just it had a big influence on me. So I love it.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, horror movies. I'll tell you what. I probably started watching them too young, but our lists. DM. I don't know about you, but there's some movies from the 70s that I still want to see, horror movies, things that maybe we'll talk about a few of those after we go through our list, but there's certainly some ones that I can guarantee that I would like if I saw them. I just haven't seen them, so I didn't put them on the list.
Sure.
Okay, so let's start at number 20. DM, you can start. You do your number 20. We'll just do a brief conversation about each now. Each person, their number, that person will do more of the talking about it, and we're certainly going to duplicate some of these. We have no idea about each other's list, where we're putting our numbers. But anyway, let's go ahead whenever you're ready, DM.
I guess...
Did you have 20?
I don't really have 20, because I just went through all the 70s movies. Like, there was a show back in the day called Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. and every Sunday she would go on, and so I don't really have like 20, because some of these aren't even horror movies. Some of these are just like strange or funny. But what the hell? I'd have to say, I guess we could say like Village of the Damned. I don't know if you ever.
Village, was that a 1970s movie?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, let's see. Do you know what year it was released?
Let me look. How many apps? Village of the Damned. And I swear, man, a lot of these are remade too.
I mean, I have Village of the Damned as a 1995, originally 1960, and 1995 remade.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, you're right. Okay, that's not on the list then. I don't, I watch a lot of these movies. I wasn't even aware of like when they came out. I just could tell by the oh wow, there's another one.
Well, how about this? How many do you have that you could? How many do you have that you could have a definable list of? Is yours maybe more like 10?
Yeah. Well, let's see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so if yours is 10, why don't we do this? I will. We can do my list together. My from 20 through 11. I'll name my list. Comment freely on it if you want. Just don't give away your position if you have it on your list.
All right.
And we'll see if you've seen them. I'm sure you've seen some, if not most of them. And we'll just give maybe like a minute to each one of these, or a little bit more than a minute. So number 20 I have is, and I haven't seen this movie in a long, long time, and I would really love to go back and watch it because I do forget some of it. Number 20 is a movie called Black Christmas.
Huh.
I'm not sure if have you heard of this one?
No, that sounds good.
Okay. So this was 1974. It starred actually John Saxon, if you remember him from Enter the Dragon.
Yeah.
He was a big 70s star. I think he starred in a John Carpenter movie. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Maybe Halloween 3 or something. Anyway, it also co-starred Margot Kidder, who's on another movie on my list. She, of course, was in Superman, ended up to be a pretty big star.
Yeah.
And Andrea Martin, actually, as well. Andrea Martin starred in this movie. She's from SCTV, which we love to talk about frequently. The Black Christmas was considered one of the first slasher movies ever. 1974, predates Halloween, and which a lot of people think the Halloween started the slasher film.
No.
But what I remember about this is just a bunch of people in a house. I think it's like COVID or something like this.
Yeah.
And there's a killer calling and stalking them. And the irony of this one is, of course, it is directed by Bob Clark, who coincidentally, we're talking about Black Christmas, he directed the movie A Christmas Story.
Really?
Which is our generation's, yes, it's our generation's It's a Wonderful Life. So he started out in horror movies. He did another one in 72, which I haven't seen, but Bob Clark actually did this movie.
Huh.
Very scary, definitely recommendable. So, okay, that's Black Christmas is my number 20.
Nice.
Moving on to number 19. Now, number 19, I didn't even know if I should include this in horror because it's definitely exploitation.
Yeah.
The title is I Spit on Your Grave.
Oh, wow.
So this was made in 1978. Stars Camille Keaton. It's about this horrible case of gang rape. Sean, DM, what did you think about this movie?
Well, first, did they remake it?
They did remake it in the 2010s.
Wow. I think everything in that time period is remade.
They've remade just about almost everything we're going to talk about has been unsuccessfully 2013.
Yeah.
No, 2010, excuse me, which was when it was remade. Very few of these, if they were remade, were better the second time. But what did you think about this when you first saw it?
Just rough. Just like I didn't understand it because I was a kid when I watched this stuff. But it's just kind of scary, and it's it's like the I'm in the house kind of scenario flick. Yeah, I liked it. I mean, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, it was an infamous movie because more than any other movie on this list, maybe except for one or two, this was banned in a lot of countries.
There we go.
It was not seen, and anytime you can live in that kind of infamy, I think that when you're banned, I think that's a rite of passage into horror movies.
Right.
So, I Spit on Your Grave, 1978. I guess I don't have anything else to really say about that movie. Again, we'll have more to say about the ones that are in the top 10 because those are going to be the classics and the ones we love. So, number 18, let's go back to 1972. I believe this was 1972, and I just want to confirm that. The movie is Last House on the Left.
The original, yeah.
The original. This is a Wes Craven movie.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, technically it's supposed to be a movie, a statement about Vietnam, which
really
another and it's about the dichotomy or the schism of the Vietnam War happening during the hippie era.
Right.
So you have like these. I think there's two hippie girls in this, and they're confronted by a gang of thugs who basically defile them in every way.
Sure.
And there is some shock value there. This also was a movie that was banned in a lot of countries. Did you see the original one?
I did not. I hate to say it.
Okay. Well, the remake actually was pretty good. It was remade, I believe, in 2005. I actually think the remake was better in some ways.
Huh.
So this was Wes Craven's original. This movie, which was the ultimate low budget, I think he made it for like $60,000 when he was in New York. So it was. There's definitely some grotesque scenes of guts and this and that, and so it barely made my list. I have it on there more. I really wouldn't even care to see it again. I really have it on there more just for popularization of the horror genre. It deserves some credit for influencing so many other horror films.
Well, Sean S. Cunningham was the producer.
Who directed or produced Friday the 13th?
Yeah.
In 1980. So
right.
he's had a pretty good career. So it definitely launched the careers of some pretty important people. Now, number 17. This is an interesting entry that I have because it's more of a short film, and again, it introduces a fantastic filmmaker named Sam Raimi. In the 1970s, specifically 1978, the precursor for The Evil Dead was a student film he did. I believe it was at the University of Michigan or Michigan State, and it was called Within the Woods. You can see this on YouTube. It's less than 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And it's basically, look, is this a great... No. I'm putting this on here, crediting it for starting one of the greatest horror franchises. Unfortunately, there's no Evil Dead movies released in the 1970s, but again, this is a precursor for these great movies to come.
Nice.
And it just gives some very basic changes, like when people become evil hits, but it introduces the camera going towards the evil being the camera going towards the characters and stalking them. So I will give it credit for that.
Nice.
Everyone dreams of doing like a nice movie, like a college movie, something to kind of kick your foot in the door. Which another one higher up on our list will be similar, just to much greater effect. So number 17 is Within the Woods by Sam Raimi. let's go to number 16. And we talked about I Spit on Your Grave, which was a very 19 on our list, controversial movie that had a famous scene where a part of a man gets cut off in a bathtub. Our 16 movie also met lots of controversy when it came out, and they attempted to ban, or they did ban it in lots of countries. They attempted to stop the release in some others. The movie is called Faces of Death.
Is that, would you consider that like technically a horror movie, or is it a documentary?
It's a documentary, probably more.
Okay.
But it was released as a movie. It's certainly
There's
horrible
actors.
to look at. It's very little. I mean, it's compared to like a sort of a snuff film. But it made a ton of money. It made $35 million years ago, which, you know, back then that was a lot of money. So
wow.
yeah, Faces of Death. Yeah, 1978. A lot of people went to see that. It spawned a lot of sequels through the years.
Yeah.
I barely remember the original. I think the last one that I really remember could have been part 3 or 4.
They started to blur together though, because it's the same like dynamic in every one. It's funny is they're gonna do a new one and revamp it, and then it's gonna be a movie based off of that. And I forgot who's gonna star in it, but yeah, they're gonna, because that had a huge following. I mean, when I was a kid, it was always like this big thing, between me and my friends to see if who could
like a rite of passage.
Yeah,
for me it was like a rite of passage. You watch it, you get grossed out, and you see dead things or people being,
animals
surgeries and animals. It's kind of, I certainly wouldn't really care to watch it anymore at all. I never really cared to watch it in the first place, but for viewership, for shock value, and just for the fact that it was so popular, wildly popular back in the day, Faces of Death. And I'll never forget actually going to the movie, the VHS store when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Going to the movie store, the movie rental store was such a big deal. And I remember just the cover of Faces of Death. It was basically a face of the shape, just like a skeleton. And it was kind of like it had it all over it. Banned in this country, banned in that country. Kind of like I Spit on Your Grave. So
it's the best marketing. It's like when you say your movie's been banned, your people are going to want to see it now. So
you might as well say to a child, I dare you to watch it.
Right.
So, all right. So that's number 16, Faces of Death. Let's go to number 15. This is definitely a movie, and it came out of nowhere. It was kind of a low budget hit. 1974. A very chilling cover to this movie as far as seeing it back in the VHS days. It's a movie called It's Alive.
It's Alive. Let me see. I want to say I've... No.
Well, let me start. I'll start talking about it.
Yeah.
1974. They did make some sequels to this. Again, this made some pretty good money. Made a little dent in the horror industry. It was about a mutant child that was born. They did do some remakes of this as well.
Good cast.
Good cast. The cover actually was this cradle with this mutant alien-looking hand coming out of it. And it says there's only one thing wrong with the Davis's baby. And, of course, marketing is a huge part of horror movies. Again, it's a mutant. And what it turns out to be, if you watch this, a little bit of spoiler alert. I'm not going to give away the end, but there's mutations going on around the country based off of some leaks in the soil or in the water from chemical corporations that are creating mutated babies.
Wow.
So after this first baby, you'll see a few more in this area, and the next thing you know, at the end, you get whoever is investigating this gets some call from another city and saying, "Oh, we got an outbreak here too." So it sort of ends in a "it's not going to end" sort of way.
Yeah. Leaves you hanging.
Yeah, I definitely recommend that. Okay, now we're going to get into number 14 is probably of the movies that we've seen is the most popular one so far. We're going back to, let's say, 1976, I believe, and I'm right. One of my absolute favorite all-time directors is Brian De Palma.
Yeah.
Made some great movies. We know of one of my favorite movies of all time is Wise Guys. It's like a spoof on Danny DeVito movie, a spoof on the mob. He also did The Untouchables, many other movies. I don't know. We don't have time really to go through his entire list, but fantastic director. The movie is Carrie.
Oh yeah,
came out
Carrie's
1976. The Stephen King book, obviously his first book. Talk about a cast. I mean, this is Sissy Spacek, who I believe did end up winning an Oscar for Coal Miner's Daughter.
Yeah.
And it also has Nancy Allen, who's done a lot of different horror movies. She did one in the early 80s, a very popular one, I forget. It was about a serial killer. I thought she was also in one of the Halloween movies. I could be mistaken. William Catt, who's the boyfriend of Carrie, of course, ended up to be the last American hero.
Yeah.
What happened to me?
Yeah, no, yeah, it was a great cast.
Yeah, he was also in House, and of course John Travolta plays the drunken asshole.
Right.
PJ Souls. Amy Irving ended up marrying Steven Spielberg. PJ Souls was in Halloween, and I think she was also in Rock and Roll High School. So anyway, it was remade.
Oh wow!
Ridiculously, I think the remake was so good.
Nancy Allen, she's in it too. Did you say that? You said that right?
No, Nancy Allen. Yep.
She's good. I just want to go over real quick. Piper Laurie's really good.
Yes.
Sidney Lasic's really good. Edie McClurg, that lady is one of my favorite.
Oh my God.
Comedic actresses ever, dude. She is so funny.
She's awesome. She was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Right?
She's a John Hughes woman. Like she's in all his movies somehow.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Remember when Steve Martin goes up to the counter?
Right.
You're fucked.
My favorite fucking Hughes movie.
So, Carrie, it actually made nearly $34 million. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it was made for $1.8 million.
Right.
So if you're talking about making 17 times what your original investment is. Now, one thing I can say about this movie is the twist in the original writing story by Stephen King. I love he really goes after religion quite a bit, Stephen King does, and small towns.
Right.
These small towns that think that they're better than big cities. It's kind of a racial thing. Don't want to be around too much diversity. Everyone feel out safer. Well, actually, no, you're not. That was the theme of Hit and so many of those other stories. But I love how the character of the mother, the overzealous religious mother, is just a really strong character. In this movie, I believe that's Piper Laurie that plays that character. Anyway, Carrie, I definitely recommend it. Of course, there's a scene at the prom which
classic
popularized the use of pig's blood.
Yeah.
Whoa, pig's blood. What am I talking about?
Yeah.
They poured pig's blood, but it was actually corn syrup that they really used. She got hit with a bucket of pig's blood.
Right.
Anyway, and then just totally destroyed the high school. Great movie. So, okay, let's move on to number 13. This one is a TV movie. Came out, I believe, in 1976 or maybe 1975. I found it very eerie, and it's The Legend of Lizzie Borden. I'm not sure if you've seen that. Of course, we know about the history of Lizzie Borden. Now, the interesting thing is who played Lizzie Borden is it Elizabeth Montgomery? She's the star of Bewitched.
Yeah.
Which was a very interesting choice of Lizzie Borden. I thought she did a great job. It was very eerie. They did a very good job with the setup of the small town, the music, the old sort of like the little small town music.
Right.
The score is very good. For a TV movie, this is, I think, pretty chilling.
There were a lot.
What's that?
Actually, the 70s was great. I watched a lot of TV movies that scared the shit out of me, as a major feature would.
Absolutely. There's going to be one coming up that's in my top 10 that was a TV movie that was one of the scariest I've ever seen. So Legend of Lizzie Borden, again, Elizabeth Montgomery. Now, the thing is that everyone's always wondered how she did the murders and how she got away with them. Everyone just assumes that she did and that she's guilty, including me. What's a great twist in this is, and if you know the Lizzie Borden case, I believe she burned a dress the day after the murders. And everyone said, "No, what are you doing? You're burning evidence." I mean, that's a major piece of evidence. They found a bloody rags down in the basement that were soaking in water. What she said is, "Well, it's my time of the month, and so that's why." And the primitive ways of taking care of that back then were keep a bucket down in the basement, I guess. Or some people did it. Some people thought she was cleaning up her bloody clothes before she destroyed them.
Right.
They also found a little piece of a hatchet in the basement without the actual metal blade part. It really all points to her. Now, in this movie, this is a spoiler. Look out for this. Cover your ears for just like 10 seconds. She goes in the nude and kills both of her parents to produce blood splatter. So that's what she does in the movie. But again, I don't know if that's necessary because of the bloody clothes that are found. Anyway, it's the twist that they took about the movie. Okay, so that's number 13, The Legend of Lizzie Borden. I highly recommend that you watch it. Going on to number 12 here, we're cruising along. This is a movie, GM. I would be very surprised if you haven't seen this one. This is one of the most popular horror filmmakers of all time, and I guess it's considered his masterpiece. We're talking about Dario Argento, who brought a Hitchcockian approach to horror movies in the 1970s. The movie is called Suspiria.
Yeah.
Were you able to watch that one? Have you seen that one?
There's the remake they put out, but I think I saw it when I was younger, but I don't remember a lot of it because I didn't really understand it either.
You know what? Yeah, it's hard to follow because I don't remember too much of it either. What I do remember is heavy use of colors. The director did colors of rooms, colors of clothing. It's basically, I think, fashion models being torn apart, or ballerinas being torn apart, something like that. And it was very atmospheric. He did a great use of music. There's a band, a very popular European band that I've never really heard of called Goblin, who did the score of a lot of his movies. Now, with his movies, like I said, there is a Hitchcockian approach to this as far as beauty in the actresses, beauty in the colors and the settings, and then death. So there's obviously something there. Now, he's taking what I consider a bit of a snob's approach to, I think he is. I could be wrong about this. I believe he's taking the snob's approach to filmmaking in saying, let's take this average script that most people would make into this average movie, and let's make it a work of art that people are going to talk about 40 or 50 years later.
Right.
Because Suspiria, to me, was, like you said, hard to don't remember much, because there was really not much of a script. I don't remember too much of the dialogue. I don't remember the actors or actresses, really.
Yeah.
But supposedly it was based off of an essay called Suspiria de Profundis.
Yeah. I'm looking at it. 1845 was published.
1845.
Oh.
The movie, it was released in Italy. Of course, it's an Italian movie. Made nearly $2 million in North American, just as rentals. It might not have even been released in America at the time. I don't know.
Might not be.
But I know that he's a very influential filmmaker. A lot of people have been influenced by his films, especially visually.
Right.
Maybe not as much by the story. Anyway, All right, so Suspiria is our number 12 list. Most people would have that on list of the greatest horror movies of the 1970s. Now, we'll move into number 11. After we do number 11, GM, we will go to our regular basically of how we're going to do the show, our outline of the show, which is we'll get into our top 10, and we'll do them one by one, and we'll do them individually.
Okay.
So number 11, let me go back to this. I believe it's 1979. Just make sure, and it is. Okay. The movie is called When a Stranger Calls.
Huh.
It stars Charles Durning, as some people remember. He's a small actor, or excuse me, like a character actor du jour. Kind of reminds me of Brian Denny.
Guy, yeah.
He was in Tootsie. He played Jessica Lange's father, who thought Tootsie really was a woman.
Right.
That was hitting on her throughout the movie. Anyway, it also stars Carol Kane.
Love her.
Who is great. She ended up, of course, doing the TV show Taxi.
Yeah, I love her.
Andy Kaufman, very good actress, very convincing too in this role. This is based off of, and I'm trying to look at. There's maybe another movie on the list that's based off of the Babysitter Murders, which is either a book or it could be just sort of folklore, sort of. And I looked this up. Because I have seen this movie recently. It was remade. I'm talking about the original.
Yeah.
The Babysitter Murders basically was this girl in a small town who went to the center of town with her friends, and I guess she was young. She was only 13 years old, and her and her friends were downtown at the high school and dressed up in sort of provocative clothing, wore makeup, and were walking around, and supposedly a lot of cars were passing by, hooting and hollering. And later on that night, she was babysitting a family friend's child. I think it was like a 3-year-old son, and she was raped and murdered in this small town.
Oh. And
there's a lot of, supposedly, there was a lot of phone calls going into the home from the person who ended up killing her. So there was a stalking element to this story. Now, in the beginning of What a Stranger Calls, DM, have you been able to watch this movie?
No, I'd heard of it, but I'd never seen it.
Okay. I highly recommend it. It is a little bit similar to Black Christmas in the fact that Black Christmas is the killer stalking the victims through phone calls, but this one is just one victim.
Yeah.
And you have the first 20 minutes basically, which this girl is babysitting children. I'm not going to give away the spoilers because the spoilers are everything about the entire movie, and the spoilers really are actually pretty scary. So the only thing I'll give away from it is that she's sitting there in this house alone, and of course it's dark. I don't know why in horror movies when people get scared they don't start turning on lots of lights,
right.
But they don't. Anyway,
right.
So this is dark house. She starts getting calls about, have you checked on the children? In this demented voice, an adult male demented voice, have you checked on the children? When is the last time you've checked on the children?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, what are you calling for? Who cares? And basically she thought it was a prank. Eventually she calls the cops and they trace the line. I'll give this one spoiler away. The big thing is that they call her back and they say, you need to get out of the house right now. And she says, why? She goes, we traced the calls. They're coming from within the house. So the killer was inside the house, nice. Terrorizing her from from an upstairs phone. Anyway, I won't give away. There's another part of that is very scary that I won't give away. The rest of the film is not as scary, although still good, because I believe some years go by. This man is either let out, he pleads insane and gets out, or escapes. I think he escapes from an insane asylum. and he terrorizes her. She moves to a different city, and he continues to terrorize her and find her. So again, very scary. The first 20 minutes are some of the most intense footage you'll see in a horror movie, and I can't recommend it enough. And hopefully, if you've heard the spoiler, you'd still want to watch it. I'm telling you, it's still very good.
Wes Craven used that in Scream. That was like the big thing in Scream too.
Oh yeah. The beginning phone call,
right?
And terrorizing somebody through a phone. Good catch.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with our official top 10 list of the best horror movies of the 1970s. Hopefully, we don't find one we missed later on and say, how do we miss this one? But I don't think we will. So, DM, do you want to start with your number 10 movie of the best horror movies of the 1970s?
Let's see. There's a movie with Shelley Winters called Whoever Slew Auntie Rue.
Wow.
And do you ever see that?
No, I've never even heard of it.
It's real.
I've heard of Shelley Winters.
Yeah, she's great. And she plays a good, like she's a widow, and the plot is she lures little kids in, and then like tortures them. And
wow.
It's about these little kids, and they actually like escape, like they fight her and all that. Hold on, where is it?
Do you know the year that it was released?
71. There we go.
71. What's the title again?
Whoever Slew Auntie Rue. I had to look this up because I was like, what the fuck is the name of this?
Now, when did you see this? How old were you?
I was like really little. Let's see. So it probably when I was like 7 or 8, and it was on.
Wow, that is. I think some people might be disturbed how young we were when we saw it.
Oh yeah, and it's the reason it freaked me out because. It's like you have this woman, and like I'm young, so I'm, I look at women as maternal figures in general because I'm a kid. And you see this woman and she's like luring kids into her home like Hansel and Gretel. It's kind of like similar to that. And then the kids, and what's great is the kids that she gets, one of them or two of them, like they fight back and escape, and she's just a fucking psychopath. And it's her performance. Like Shelley Winters is great. She's so dramatic, and she's a fucking nut in this. And that's how I got, I learned about Shelley Winters. And this is one of those movies I watched when I think it was played after, in the afternoon, movie on the local channel, KTLA, I believe. And it was just, it just freaked me out because it was so bizarre for me to see this.
Yeah. Well, it sounds pretty scary. Was there a scene, if you remember, when she lures one of the children in, does she take them by the hand and then cut their hand off with a knife?
I think so.
I just remember it was one of the most disturbing things. I remember seeing a movie, and it was one of those things where when I was a kid, if there was a horror movie on it, in the 1970s on TV,
right.
I'm talking about maybe 79, 80. I mean,
right.
I was born in 74, so I'm talking about 75. But say in 1980, 79, there was some pretty disturbing things on late night TV.
Oh yeah.
That they would show, and I remember watching something. I was like, "Can I stay up late?" Sure. And I saw this, and it was a very peaceful, serene setting. A child comes up. I believe it was a young girl, and this nice older woman puts her hands out, and as soon as the girl puts her hand on hers, she smiles and pulls out a knife and begins to cut her hand off.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, "Is she going to cut her hand off?" And my mom's like, "That's it. Change the channel."
Right.
Because my dad's like, he can handle it. He's a big tough guy.
Right.
And my mom's like, no more of this stuff. So
yeah.
All right, so that is number 10, DM on your list. My number 10 is a film that I'm going to intro this. I'm going to have a little bit of intro to this because it really scared me because I lived on my childhood home we moved to in Sturbridge, Massachusetts, was 112 South Shore Drive. The address of the home of the horror movie in this movie is 112 Ocean Drive in the South Shore of Amityville, New York.
Nice, yeah.
The movie is the Amityville Horror, released in 1979. And I remember years later, there was a really crappy remake of this with Ryan Reynolds. He sucks in that movie. I personally don't like him in general. But anyway, the original movie, I remember reading the book by Jay Anson. I think it was like 22. And a lot of these things that I saw the movie of, I went back to my early 20s or late teens and wanted to read the book. The book at the time, I'm talking about 25 years ago, was I couldn't put it down. I read it all in one night. I was home alone that night, and I got really scared after I read it. It was one of those things where I was hearing little things in the night after I read it alone at like 3 o'clock in the morning. But it's something as an adult that I look back on, and it's obviously a hoax. The original, if anybody knows the background, the origin of the Amityville Horror is not a hoax. It's where...
No, it's based off a true story, yeah.
Absolutely. There's a drug addict named Ronald DeFeo who murders his entire family. Now, he says that a ghost came down in white. A ghost in white came down, handed him a shotgun, and said, "Kill your entire family." He was whacked out on heroin. What we now know, not that we know, but I don't think this has ever gone into public record regarding the murder, but what he said later on, he says, like, look, this wasn't, I was trying to plead insanity. It wasn't a ghost. It was my older sister. And he says, me and my older sister had plotted to kill our parents. And she said, what he said is that she gave him the gun and said, kill the parents now. He went into the bedroom. He shot his mom and his dad. What he says is that she took the gun and went up the next story to kill little brothers and sisters. I believe there's 2 brothers and 1 sister, I believe, besides them. And he went up and said, what did you do? We were only supposed to kill the parents. And then he said she was going to try to blame the whole thing on him because she wanted the inheritance. They were talking about how rich they were. So she tried to shoot him. He grabbed the gun from her, and he shot her on the top floor. So anyway, that sounds pretty believable to me because one thing I kept thinking is how can everyone stand still basically while everyone's getting murdered? Because if he was the only one to do it, he would have gone to the 2nd floor, then to the 3rd floor, then to the 4th floor without anybody putting up a fight. Anyway, in the movie, one interesting thing, of course, was the red room in the basement, which supposedly the history of this property was that there's a guy named John Ketchum who used this property. The house had since been rebuilt, except for this basement. And what he did is he was a guy that in colonial days, what they did to some of their freaks, some of the original, pilgrims or the original settlers, is they would assign them to other types of duty instead of putting them in a prison. What they did to him is they said he was a nutbag that liked to experiment on people and cut them up and stuff. What they did is they used his house to house refugee Indians, and supposedly he took them down to the basement and tortured them in this basement. Of course, like I said, the house was rebuilt. Now the second family to live there were the Lutzes, and that's where the bullshit comes in.
Yeah.
Where I think everyone believes that it's a hoax and that it didn't really, the door didn't fly off. There wasn't a little baby pig that befriended the daughter. That's just my opinion. However, it is still a very good horror movie. You got Margot Kidder, who's in Black Christmas, and she's great. And who's that guy? The guy who married.
Oh my God.
The guy who married Barbara Streisand.
Barbara Streisand, yeah. James Groven.
That's Charles Grodin. No, it's James Brolin. Brolin, very close.
Brolin, yeah.
and the most ridiculous overactor of all time, Rod Steiger, whose performance I think is a little bit of a joke in this movie. But anyway, very good movie, and it was actually a huge independent film. Made even more money than Halloween. Came out the year after Halloween and just tore through the box office. I remember it just being... Anyway, all right, so that's my number 10. DM, let's go to your number 9.
Let's see. I'd have to say there's a movie called Psychomania.
Wow, excellent. I've never heard of it.
It's like a British horror flick. It's scary, but it's more so just bizarre. Basically, there's a psychopath, and he's the leader of a violent youth gang named the Living Dead. They dabble in black magic and spend much of the time located at an ancient ruin. Located in Surrey countryside, and they worship like a frog god. And then where is it? The leader commits suicide, and with his mother's help, he returns from the dead, and they grant his whole gang powers.
Wow.
And it was one of those other movies I watched on Halloween. Was it second grade or whatever, and it was just on. And the biggest scene I remember, seriously, it was like that. And then I watched Kiss's Night at the Carnival or whatever that shit movie was. But
oh God, yeah, that did suck, huh? I watched it too, though.
It was fun, as a kid you're watching it because it's so ridiculous. I was a big Kiss fan back then, but that's
huge.
That's how it was. And they lumped all these movies together, but it was weird because they're riding around and they have this superpower. And one of the things I remember is one of the guys riding his little motorcycle. He rides it right into a wall and it gets right back up, and it's like they're driving around on their bikes, and it's like just being a motorcycle gang, but they're dead. So it's they're just ongoing and being more not really scared, but more like a nuisance to the local community. But yeah, it's just one of those movies I won't forget because it was just so bizarre.
I love it, man. I love when, unfortunately, my top 10 list, I think, has a lot of mainstream horror movies. I really almost wanted to stay away from it because the fun of this is bringing up old horror movies that nobody's heard of. So kudos on that selection. Yeah, it's about black magic and the undead. Anytime you combine those two things together, you're going to get something scary. It's a British movie. Excellent. Okay, so let's go. My number 9, I'm going to go to the year 1979, a film directed by Don Coscarelli, who I really love. This guy directed The Beastmaster in 1982.
Oh, wow.
I must have seen that movie. That and The Outsiders. Those two movies in the early 80s, I must have rented and saw those 50 times, or Cinemax.
Yeah.
I'm looking at his other films. I mean, he did the sequels to the movie I'm about to mention. All right, looks like that's about it. But all right, so the movie 1979 is called Phantasm.
Oh my God! I forgot. I love that that movie. Was another one I saw late at night, and it scared the shit out of me because of the fucking tall man or whatever he was called.
Angus Scrimm. Great.
Just amazing actor, real fucking scary, and it was one of those other movies where it's there was always a theme during the 70s horror movie where you just can't kill the villain. The monster is unstoppable. And this guy was weird. And then the scene where he's got and it's funny because the images they look just like the Jawas from Star Wars, but the little demons.
Yes.
Yes. And then you find out there's a portal to another dimension and all this shit. And the whole time it's this guy's out of nowhere and he's after this kid and his brother, and it's like, and you remember the bald guy that was Friends, and he had like a barracuda, and
yeah, Reggie.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great fucking movie, and it's like, you know, I looked it up, and I couldn't believe it. There was like 4 or 5 of them over the years.
I saw part 2 and part 3. I enjoyed all of them, every single one that I watched. And you can't forget too that little ball that he would send them after, and this is what it was: is he was stealing the dead. He would go to the grave, steal the dead, turn them into these little zombies that would do his bidding.
Right.
And basically he was an undertaker.
Yeah.
The Tall Man. Now the Tall Man, they really copied this character that was created in recent horror movies. He may be titled like the Slim Man.
Yeah, yeah.
Or the Thin Man, or whatever. It's sort of like a tall thin guy in black. This guy who did this movie was the original guy. He was, I don't know, 6'10", something ridiculous.
Real,
he was incredibly tall, very scary looking dude. And again, it was one of those came from out of nowhere horror movies to be quite a big hit in 1979.
Yeah, huge.
Huge hit. Like I said, it did enough to. Phantasm 2 was good. Phantasm 3, I think, was a little better. I think Phantasm 2 was really good. But,
oh, wow.
As far as I know, they made a 4 and like you said, a 5. I want to say, this reminds me of Tremors, of the movie Tremors, because they kept making them and making them and making them. And the Reggie guy, the bald guy, keeps starring in them. And I think the guy's like almost 80 now.
Right. Yeah.
And he's been in, I think, just about everyone ever made. Go back and watch the first one to any listeners out there. The original Phantasm movie, that's Phantasm, made by Don Coscarelli in 1979. All right, so, DM, let's go into your number 8 selection. Best horror movie of the 1970s.
Oh, Return to Boggy Creek.
Return to Boggy Creek. I did see that one.
Scared the fuck out of me because I lived in California at the time, and I watched a show called In Search of, and with Leonard Nimoy. And
loved it.
Like, if you live in California in the 70s, there's UFOs, Bigfoot, and like crazy and murderers. And so, like, as a kid, I lived next to the mountains. And I was, I got scared of, the shit out of it, and I looked out the window and stuff. And then on top of it, Bigfoot was a big thing back in the 70s, and
it was huge.
And then I had a friend who went on a trip up north with his dad and went camping or went somewhere, and he claimed to have seen a Bigfoot. He's probably full of shit, but being young and naive, I was like, easily intimidated and very believable. So it's like, that shit scared the fuck out of me. And there was another Bigfoot movie, but that one was just super scary because a lot of it was like Bigfoot was like, he was scary because it was rainy and it took place, I think, in the Everglades. I believe so. But it scared the fuck out of me. And it was because it was so mysterious. You didn't know anything about Bigfoot, but you just start hearing about this mythical creature who lived in the woods.
Yeah, it's in the 1970s, there was a heavy emphasis on either Bigfoot or grizzly bears, maniacal grizzly bears, or giant rats.
Yeah.
I remember, hopefully this isn't on your list. It's not on mine, but it was called the Food of the Gods, which was about some experiment where a bunch of vermin and things become outgrown, like giant rats and stuff like this. Of course, there was the movie Ben with by the giant rat with Michael Jackson did the theme song to that.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah. Anything out in nature. By the way, back in the 70s, people loved it. I loved the natural habitat of being out in the woods. Besides being a horror movie, I loved the beautiful scenery, which is kind of lost in modern movie. And this is why, DM, you and I have gone on about this. Like, you love DC action movies, superhero movies. I can't stand them. I liked them. I liked Iron Man. I liked Spider-Man back in the day and Superman, but and Batman, some of the older ones. But it's just gotten ridiculous. And some of the old original filmmaking, when you talk about beautiful scenes of out in the woods. I mean, I was a huge fan of Grizzly Adams when I was a kid.
Right, yeah.
Because I love the scenery. So anyway, excellent selection for number 8. I'm sorry, did you have anything else to say about the movie?
Return to Bottom. No, I think that was it. And that was it, yeah.
Cool, all right. So my number 8 movie is similar to Legend of Lizzie Borden, although it's considered a TV miniseries, made in 1979. Now, there's only 2, if it is a miniseries, I believe it was only 2-hour episodes, if you want to call it a TV miniseries.
Yeah.
The Ultimate in Terror. I'm looking at the cover right now, and there's a movie out right now which kind of steals the look a little bit. The movie is The Last Voyage of the Demeter, I believe.
Oh.
So this movie is in the 1979. We're talking about Stephen King's Salem's Lot. Which...
love it. Classic. Like, it's on my list. And that scared the fuck out of me, too, because of how they took the Nosferatu vampire and used that one, and it was like he was menacing instead of being like a creepy, sexy, character. This monster was a straight up, just evil he was an evil manipulator, and he was fucking scary because of the way he looked and his teeth and how pale.
Absolutely.
He looked like a
disgusting. Now in the book, if anybody's read the book, he is like dressed like a businessman and suave. And I'll tell you what, in the 1970s and the 1960s with Dracula, I fucking hated that. I hated those like slicked back hair. George, whatever the fuck that guy's name is, the Hollywood guy. George.
Oh. The pretty
Dracula
guy.
with a tan.
Yeah.
Whatever that guy's name is, he played the worst Dracula. Even Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, these great actors, Shakespearean actors, they were great. I still didn't like those movies nearly as much as some of the earlier Dracula movies. Right. Anyway, this is Tobe Hooper, who directed some of the greatest horror movies of all time.
Yeah.
Did this, and I think this proved that he could do movies that were not violent or gory.